The Iranian president has moved to put into effect a long-postponed plan to scrap subsidies on basic commodities, despite fears of unrest. Is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad breaking his electoral promise to help the poor, his main source of support? And are sanctions the only reason behind Iran's economic woes? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Sahil Rahman. Welcome to the programme. A new price tag on several basic goods in Iran. The government has slashed subsidies on food, water, electricity and fuel. They say the subsidies have been an expensive affair, costing them around $100 billion annually. The cutbacks have been described as the biggest surgery to the nation's economy in 50 years. Sarah Barden reports now on Iran's economic revolution.
Iranians woke up on Sunday morning to a new reality. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad finally announced what he's calling the subsidies regulating plan on state television late Saturday evening.
God willing, from late tonight, and for that I mean tomorrow, we will begin the plan.
Petrol prices will rise from 40 cents per litre to 70 cents. Electricity prices will jump from around $5 per month to $20. A dramatic increase also for the cost of natural gas, from around $30 per month to $150. It's left many worried.
I pay $13 a day for gas. That means almost $400 a month. I have a family of 4. How much has the government given us? $320? What can I do with that? That money doesn't even cover my gas costs.
The idea of eliminating subsidies is not a concept born by the current president. Subsidies have been part of Iran's economic scene since the 1950s, and the desire to get rid of them has always been there. But the point of contention among politicians has been how to do it. Many in Parliament are calling Ahmadinejad's plan shock therapy, saying it's too soon and too fast.
Of course, the government promised that it's not going to happen in the first 3 months of the implementation of the plan, but I can guarantee you when the new year starts, which is 21st of March, we will see a huge jump in the prices of basic goods and commodities.
And in anticipation of what this drastic move will do to public opinion, the government has given out cash incentives to everyone who registered. Each person has received $40 per month for 2 months to help cope with the rising prices. But many believe that is nowhere near enough to deal with such drastic hikes in prices in a country where the average income is around $500 per month. Sarah Barden, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining me on the programme today from Tehran, Said Lilaz, a political and economic analyst. From London, Elahe Mohtasham, an Iran academic. And here in Doha, Mahjoub Zwahiri, Professor of Contemporary History of the Middle East at the Qatar University and an Iran expert. To all of my guests, welcome to this edition of Inside Story. Can I begin with you, Mr. Lilaz, in Tehran? I mean, on the surface, these are sweeping changes which will affect the public across the board from all social strata. I wonder why the public hasn't reacted angrily to these changes. It all seems very peaceful in Tehran.
Of course, the political situation is different from the other situations in past, first of all, and secondly, government has made a lot of advertisement, a lot of preparations, and it has been much more ready to do this big project than the previous projects. For example, they rationalized the petrol, in which government saw some difficulties and some troubles.
Mr. Zwahiri in Doha, yes. Can I just bring you in here on this? Are you surprised by the reaction in Iran, considering many other global governments have been bringing in austerity measures to try and sort their budgets out, so to speak? Here we have increases in prices and nothing's been said by the Iranian public.
You know, it's very difficult to compare between the movement, the social movement in European societies and movements in Middle Eastern societies. The reactions also take some time, and I do believe that the reactions to this kind of decision may come late. However, we have to keep in mind that the government had announced that they are taking into consideration some measures which are also increasing the security presence in the streets, trying to highlight that, you know, and also highlight that this decision is to help Iranian economy in long term, and I think we have to look at that in a wide context, which actually the Iranian political context after 2000 last previous election, basically, which is 2009.
Ms. Adesham, in London, let's bring you in here. You've heard what my guests in Doha and Tehran have said. How do you assess the situation, just briefly, just to give us an idea of where you're coming from what you've seen and heard in Iran?
It has always been very difficult to measure the degree of satisfaction or protest against Iranian government. This has been the case throughout various regimes. Even during the Shah's regime, it was like that, and people, analysts, have always been surprised. There has always been an element of surprise in relation to 1979 Iranian Revolution. There was an element of surprise in terms of protests following 2009 elections. I think the problem is that it is generally, academically, in terms of scientific analysis, difficult to measure people's mood, especially if you are not in Iran. And even if you are in Iran, you get a different perspectives. I mean, I was in Iran a few months ago, and I was really surprised to see that how Iranian society has been polarized. It is true that there is a lot of discontent in Iran because of political repressions, political arrests, security relations between the intelligence ministry and the people, more liberal-minded people. But at the same time, I did see people who were supporting the Iranian government and its policies.
Okay.
So it is. I mean, my main point is that here in the West, that we are analyzing the degree of protest in Iran, we do tend to emphasize and look for issues related to discontent, protests, etc. But when you are inside Iran, you see a different perspective. So in terms of analysis, it's really extremely difficult to find out how and when this dissatisfaction with economic policies would likely to erupt,
well,
whether it would be the after these announcements, or whether it would take a few months or even a few years. I mean, we may wait here another 25 years, 30 years, and nothing would happen.
If I just bring in Mr. Zweiri, who wants to come in here in Doha. I'll come in on a point. Mr. Zweiri, please.
I'm just, if you go back to the contemporary history of Iran, 1960s and 70s, most of the decisions made by the Pahlavi's government, the result, the outcome came after 20 years. We have to keep in mind that the societies, the people, they are monitoring, and the action always come late. One other important point, that the level of preparedness which was done by the government is very important, because there was kind of awareness that these kind of measures should be taken actually before Ahmadinejad's government. This kind of debate started in Iran in 2000, actually in 1989, when Mohammad Khatami was in power. We have to keep this in mind. These kind of things did not happen in Europe. Europeans, they wake up to the fact there is a crisis, and the governments made the decision, and suddenly they lost a lot of what they used to enjoy. So basically, these kind of things need to keep we need to keep in mind.
If you keep that all in mind, let's go historically. Mr. Laz in Tehran, there are perhaps many factors that have been discussed by our guests in Doha and London, but what is to blame for the point that Iran has come to right now? You could look at sanctions as one aspect. You could look at underinvestment. Historically, there's been perhaps a lack of forward planning. And the global economic downturn that we're seeing now is not just affecting Iran, for example, it's affecting all countries. So where do you think the blame lies? Or is it that many factors have now influenced the way that the Iranian government have had to act right now?
these arguments which you are mentioning exactly, in my opinion, can be the main reason that government exactly now is performing this big project. Because first of all, we cannot continue the current situation anymore. We need much more investment inside the country. Private sector does not participate in the economy as the past at least, and government has not enough money and resources to invest itself, and because of this we have increasing unemployment rate at the moment in the country, and because of sanction our petrol importing is in trouble. I think this project can help the country and can help the government to compensate some sections of these problems. We can reduce our fuel consumption and reduce our need to petrol importing. We can have at least 30 to 35 billion US dollar more saving money, and government can double its investment in the country. And exactly because of these reasons, I think this is the time in which the government should perform the plan.
Okay, Mr. Lelas, let me just bring in Ms. Mohtasham here, and just before we get on to a tiny part of this conversation about sanctions, just very briefly, Ms. Mohtasham, the government is saying that they'll give compensation for the next 2 months to the public for suffering what they are at the moment, but could we see a potential for disruption very similar to those riots in 2007, where many petrol stations were burnt out when petrol prices were increased?
Actually, this is a very good question, and I was going to address that even before you asked me. I just wanted to say that the present Iranian government may be mistaking and carrying out a sort of policies, repeating mistakes which the Shah's regime at the latest part between 1977 and 79 were doing, and that was the Shah was concentrating on modernizing, rationalizing Iran's economy, industry, etc., without any due respect to political demands, need for democracy. I think what the present Iranian government is doing, maybe they are repeating the same mistakes which the Shah did. I believe that if they are going to do good things in terms of rationalizing Iranian economy, it should go hand in hand with political democratization of Iran. Because, for example, many policies which President Ahmadinejad is carrying out is really what the liberal, democratic section of Iran, more affluent section of Iranian society were asking previous governments to do, as our academic in Doha pointed out. But what they are not doing is that they are not trying to give political rationalization, political democratic. They are not addressing these demands of people, which. A more affluent society who were protesting during the post-election period were saying. So I think they should be very careful because there is a danger that they are doing what the Shah did, and they may face the same problems because these are some structural issues that they are ignoring. Okay,
well, let's just bring our viewers up to speed with a part of the subject which is about the sanctions. These cutbacks come as the Iranian economy is straining under those international sanctions. Earlier this year, the United Nations, the USA and the European Union all imposed tough new sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. The US and its allies say they're convinced Iran is trying to make a bomb, but Tehran insists its nuclear ambitions are peaceful and for civilian purposes only. Iran could potentially face additional sanctions if growing tension with the international community is not resolved. Now, this is what some of the people on the streets of Tehran had to say about the decision over the removal of subsidies.
We should support the government. We will feel the benefits of the plan afterwards. We shouldn't consume so much energy. 6 times more than countries like India is unacceptable. We are a country of 75 million.
I disagree with this plan because there was no prior warning about it. The money that they've deposited into our accounts is just one side of the coin. The other side is the fact that we don't know by how much they will increase the prices of water, electricity and energy prices.
Let's just move on now to some of the factors that are affecting Iran right now. Mr. Zawahiri in Doha. Now, some within Iran are suggesting that such a move to increase fuel prices will help to modernise industry. Is that a realistic aspiration, considering there are so many sanctions against Iran over various issues? And also, the country does export to regional neighbours and beyond things such as rugs and nuts and fresh fruit.
You know, I don't think so that this has to deal with the how Iranians are consuming. The problem is, I think, is related to 3 main points. One, the huge loss of recent Iranian budget, where basically Iran expected more than $25 billion in the last 2 years to invest in its oil sector. Iran was not able to have more than $11 billion. And more important, there was a loss with $100 billion for these subsidies. And more important, actually, there is no more investors in other Iranian economic sectors. So these are 3 dimensions we have to put together. I'm not sure that how Iranians consuming is a real concern, because basically from what I know about Iranians, I'm not sure that this will change their behaviors of consuming, because basically this is the basic of their life. They will, those who have, or those who don't have, they will consume oil because this is part of their daily life. I think the issue is related to the wide framework, which goes back to the sanctions, to political pressures on Iran in recent years, and also how Iran can respond to more sanctions according to what we gather in recent days. I think Iranian government is trying to respond, I would say, in advance to any kind of reactions or any kind of sanctions the 5+1 may make a decision about them in recent months. It's kind of a prepare for the worst after what's going to happen after the next round of negotiation between 5+1 and Iran. It's something motivated by politics, by the negotiation with the Europeans, and by the failure to deliver in terms of building a strong economy in the last 5 years.
Mr. Lilaz in Tehran, does it all really boil down, as Mrs. Zawahiri says, down to the sanctions, and that really the sanctions against Iran over its nuclear ambitions are the focal point for why Iran is in, if we can say, in this mess at the moment?
As I mentioned this before, at the moment, the most important thing is that from technical and from economic point of view, the government and the country has no other choice. They have no other choice to do. We are wasting our energy resources in a very bad situation. We to produce every $4 gross domestic product, we are consuming $1 energy, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst in the world. Our oil production is decreasing. Our oil export in the country is decreasing dramatically. And if we continue this situation, which is impossible in my opinion, 5 or 10 years later, we will have no oil to export. And the main sources of the hard currency of the country is oil export.
But wouldn't you also say, sir, I just want to interject there, sir, most of the industries you're talking about are state-owned, in the hands of the government, and you might even say the Guardian Council. For those industries in Iran to progress and develop, you need outside help, you need outside development, you need outside cash, and that's something that the Iranian regime for the moment does not want.
I suppose that the sanction or diplomatic situation of the country is a reality for this economic project. And we cannot rely on foreign investment to renew the industry of the country, even for oil industry, because of the very hard political situation of the country in the world community. Because of this, government and the country have no other choice to reduce the consumption of the energy, which is around 1.3 billion equivalent of oil, barrel of oil. And my estimation shows that if we can save 300 million equivalent barrel oil energy in this consumption, we can have around $30 billion additional money and resources to invest in the country, in industry of the country, and the other sections which are under pressure because of the lack of enough money for investment.
Okay, well, I think
because of this.
Yeah, I think.
And from environmental point of view, we need to think about the situation of Tehran and big cities in which more than 10 million passenger cars are consuming the 10-liter.
Those are the conditions and situations. I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. Those are the conditions and points certainly that are being made by the government. So let's talk about the government. Ms. Ahmadinejad, let me bring you in here. You wanted to come in. We're coming to the end of our programme very closely. I want to ask now what the impact will be on somebody like President Ahmadinejad, who promised to look after the poor and those that were disenfranchised, when his election promise, well, he seems to be going back on his election promises, doesn't he?
Yes. May I inject something? I can go halfway with what our colleague in Tehran said, in a sense that to some extent the Iranian government has to implement these policies. But the main issue, the main problem is the issue of accountability. The critique of this program are saying that, okay, we are going to rationalize the economy and get money off these subsidies, but where is the money going? Is it really going to the people who need it, or is it going to just a few group of people around the government who have contacts through channels?
Okay, so how transparent then? How
issue is the accountability.
Sorry, how transparent then does the president have to be with not only his decision making, but the implementing of generating that cash?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the central question, and he needs to be transparent. We need democratic, open-minded sort of people who administer. And also, I agree with your point that Iran needs to open up to international society, to bring more investment in. So I think half of what our colleague in Tehran and half of what you said, if we can put these two together, then we can have something which would be efficient, beneficial to people, and would likely to prevent any unrest and benefit everybody. Otherwise, if the money is all going through the channels of only a few group of people, then we have a situation maybe like the previous regimes in Iran, which the public, and then we had the Iranian Revolution of 1979.
Well, there, for the moment, we do have to leave. I'd like to thank all of my guests in Tehran, Mr. Said Leilaz, in London, Ella Mohtasham, and in Doha, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on this edition of Inside Story, and thank you for watching. We do welcome your comments and suggestions. Please do email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Sahil Rahman. Thanks very much for your time and your company.